So in the previous video, I showed you guys how to make a simple animation. So assuming you guys already are familiar with that and have come to this point, I'm going to show you how to make the rest of the game. So the first thing that I want to do is talk about the animation. So if you look now, if I press play now, you'll see it already starts moving. Oh, it's moving weirdly. So I think because the player position is right, okay. Let me just show you a few things that I changed. So you can see that once I start playing, when I start the game, it immediately starts animating in that direction and that motion, right? But I don't want it to start. The default state is not supposed to be. Now you see, upon entry of the game, it goes straight into the animation, but I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be this sort of idle state until the button is pressed. Okay, so I left click, create state, empty state. So now I have my empty state. I'm gonna rename it. This is case sensitive. So I'm just gonna use all non-capital letters. And alright, none, enter. Okay, and then I'm gonna right click on it and make it my default state. So now upon entry, you'll see that it won't move. Okay, you can look at it here, or you can also double check it here. Don't worry about the position. It's because I changed the script. So I'm gonna show you the script that I changed now. If you remember, I put the script in Game Manager, so I'm just gonna open it. Okay, so I filled up some stuff to save time. You guys can pause the video and check it out. So first thing I'm gonna introduce is these new items. So you have your player parent, because I want to set the object of the position of the player parent. And then you have your animators. This will be your animation. You have the transform of the start position, which is basically the transform of this game object. You have the transform of the end, and then you want to create two new vectors to there are better ways to do this, so I'm just doing this for the sake of the tutorial in case you're not familiar with Unity. So you want to create two new vectors to set your initial and your final position of your player and your player parent, and you want to have a bool, so you want to check whether it's at the end or not. So if you guys are unsure, you can actually try making this whole thing without the player parent first, and just setting everything according to the player, setting all the positions of the player rather than the player parent. So what I did here is I have a player parent, but unless you don't have a player parent, you won't quite understand the importance of having one. Okay, so in the player animation, you want to get the component of the animator so that you can start playing your animation. Then I created my vectors, my start position and my end position. So basically, it's a new vector that is the start point, the x and the z position of the start point. And for the transform of the y point, I want my cube to remain in the same y position as it originally was, rather than take the position of the start point for the y-axis. So I'm just gonna, so just note that it's start point for x and for z, and not for the y. And similarly for the n is the same as well. Okay, then after that, in your initialization, the last step would be to set your player parent transform position to your start position. Okay, so now my start position is a bit off, because if you can see, my player center is here and my player parent center is here. So to fix this, if you can see, when I first press play, this runs, so my player parent's position will be at the start position. So the transform is right here, the pivot. So to fix this, I'm just gonna go into my player and I'm gonna set these coordinates to 0. Okay, so now if I press play, you'll see everything works as it should go. Okay. Just for the sake of this script, I'm gonna change a little bit. So instead of having a game manager, I don't think I need this anymore. I'm gonna delete it, and instead I'm gonna just drag this script onto the player parent itself. So I have one less thing to initialize, basically. Okay, so again, I have to assign all the stuff to it. player, start point, end point. Okay, so I'm just gonna save this and save this. Okay, so this is all the new stuff I added, and then under on button pressed, I also added this simple logic. If your player is at the end while your button is being held, then you want to start playing the, sorry, if your player is not at the end while the button is being held, then you want to start playing the animation you created, whereas if it is at the end, you want your player parent to stay at the end with your player in the middle of your player parent. Okay, and if the button is not pressed and your player is at the end, then you want it to stay at the end. Else, you want your button to just go back to the beginning and play nothing. So you want to end any existing. So if you're in the middle of this animation, you want to immediately end it, and by changing it to this state of nothing. Okay, so you can copy this as a last resort if you can't figure it out. Although I would probably encourage you to, it's simple logic, just figure it out yourself and write one. And okay, so that's not the important part. That part is quite trivial. We're gonna go into the how do we make it stay at the end. So now if you build it and you hold down the button, you'll see that it moves and then it doesn't really stay at the end, or maybe it stays at the end. No, it doesn't stay at the end because there is no at end. You can't really build it because your at end is always false. So how do we make a real kind of checking, like how do we check whether it is at the end or not? I'm gonna create this void on trigger enter collider collision. Okay, so the importance of this is alright, I don't need this anymore. Okay, hang on, let me explain this first. In your player, you'll see a box collider. So this is basically, you want to check is trigger because you want it to be sort of this. If you're not familiar with what box collider is, you can go read up on it. It basically just kind of gives your game object some kind of physical collider body. So when it collides with other colliders, you will know. Just try this up a bit. So if you click edit collider and you zoom in, you'll see that it takes the dimension, so you don't have to adjust this. And I'm going to give my player object a rigid body, and click on is kinematic. And similarly for my endpoint, I'm going to do it for my end plane. I'm going to add here a box collider. It already has a mesh collider, but I kind of want it to be sort of a zone, like a vertical zone in the y-axis, to make sure no matter what, my player definitely hits the collider and doesn't miss the collider, no matter because I'm not sure how high my player is. So this is just a shortcut to it. Okay, so enough talk. I've added my box collider. I'm going to click this trigger and I'm going to add in my rigid body and put is kinematic. So is trigger and is kinematic just kind of makes it these components sort of a ghost component, like it exists but there's not going to be any physical repercussions. Like if you hit into it, it's not going to be a real collision. You can just go through it. It's kind of just puts the object, the collider and the rigid body in a ghost plane. Okay, so, you can read up on that more or just look at some examples if you don't understand what it means. Okay, so now that I've added my box collider and rigid body to the end plane as well as the player, I'm gonna go back here, and here I'm gonna put so if there is a collision, I'm gonna immediately stop my player from moving. Oh, sorry, I always make this. And then I want to check the collision. If the collision is with a game object of tag finish. So why do I add this? If we go back, I'm gonna just go into my end plane and you'll see a tag here, and then we're just gonna put finish. Right. So now if you check if it's finished, we're gonna just put at n equals true. And then we're gonna put the transform of the player parent as the end pos. so as you can see, I added this virtual button onto the player parent component. So actually I don't need this. I can just take it away. And for everything that has player parent, I can just, because this is the game object, so you can just put game object here and it will automatically refer to the object that you attach the script to, or actually you don't need to put anything at all, because this automatically refers to the object that you attach the script to. Okay, I hope that's clear. So I'm gonna remove all these and done. Okay, so this is how you put an on trigger, and I'm gonna save it. And now I'm going to make sure that this is refreshed. Okay, so this is refreshed, this is in sync, and now I'm gonna build it.